Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Strike Up the Band podcast. And this is Mike Miller. And today on the show, I've got Elliot Deutsch. Elliot is a Los Angeles based musician who is a trumpet player, a composer, arranger, big band leader, teacher, I'm going to say, because he's got all these instructional videos on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel with about 8,000 subscribers. So, Elliot, thanks for being with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I met Elliot virtually just a couple of years ago, the same as I met Vinny, who was my first guest on this podcast, uh, through a Facebook group on home recording for brass players. And, Elliot's been very generous. In fact, Elliot and Vinny and myself were the three admins for that group. So
Oh
the
yeah.
group has kind of slowed down since the pandemic has kind of dried up a little bit, which is good. But it was a lot of fun learning from these guys during that time. So Elliot, I'll just start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your musical background and what you do, and we'll just go from there, man.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, I mean, I just turned 40 to give you some perspective, but I went to college at UCLA, started as a math major, but I pretty quickly figured out the music was really where I wanted to be, and I ended up majoring in jazz studies and learned how to improvise and a little bit about how to sight read, and started gigging my second half of being in college, and eventually picked up a couple of really great pro gigs. My first kind of pro with air quotes around it was doing the Disney College Band, which kind of gave me a lot of confidence.
Was that All American band?
Yeah, the All American Band. So
Yeah, that's the
it was
same thing
20.
Alex was in.
Yeah, Alex was in it, and he was one of our guest artists when I was in it in 2003. And no, but I mean, it was a 20-piece band. It was put together with students from different colleges all across the United States, and every single other person in the band was a music major that intended to become a professional musician, and I was the only math major among the 20. And that kind of gave me the confidence that maybe I really do have what it takes to just take music seriously and make it what I'm doing. A couple of years later, I auditioned for and got picked up by the artist Solomon Burke, and I played with him for a couple of years, and we toured all over the place, and that was really great. And then I went to grad school at Cal State Long Beach, where they really kicked my butt, and that's where I learned how to sight read finally. And while I was there, I learned how to write for big band, or I got started learning to write for big band. Really, I'm still learning, which is a wild thing. But yeah, so I took an arranging for big band class and had to write a chart for the band for the end of the semester, and we read it down with the one band at Long Beach that I was playing in. So I wrote my arrangement for 4 trumpets because I was going to go down and direct it. But yeah, we played the chart, and it went great. Like, it sounded like a big band chart, and that I was so excited about that. And I had my master's recital around the corner. I thought, I should write a few more charts and have a big band on my recital. And that was sort of the start of my big band. Putting the band together for my recital. First, to keep into perspective, Cal State Long Beach has an incredible jazz band. It has a tradition of having an incredible band, and the band, when I was there, won the Monterey Next Generation Jazz Festival competition. And so we were kind of like a nationally recognized school ensemble. But when I put a band together of some people from the school band and some people that I met from Solomon Burke's band and from salsa gigs I was playing, and threw together my own big band for my recital, we did one rehearsal, and it was obvious immediately how much stronger that was than the school band. Right? I mean, it should be obvious, but to me, it was kind of eye-opening. Whereas I could put together my own band and have it be a notch up from even the school band, because I was at that point really worried about what would happen after I graduate. Would I find places to play? Would I be able to push my craft? And I was getting into writing, like, who would play the stuff that I write? So I put together my band strictly so that I could keep writing and have a good band to read it down every once in a while. and and it's still going. Good 18 years later, or whatever it was. I guess, or if we consider my recital the first gig, that was 2006 in March. So I guess 17 years later, it's still going, almost 17 years.
That's great. It's hard to keep anything together for that long.
Yeah. But I'm also a professional trumpet player. I gig a lot with two bands mainly these days. It's been this like corporate wedding band called That Vibe. And we play on a lot of weekends, and then seasonally I play with a polka band called Die Sauerkrauts that has kind of become the workingest polka band in LA, and that's surprisingly become a large part of my income now is playing polka gigs on the weekend. But outside of that, I've still been creating and releasing creative big band music. And so this kind of gets you toward my YouTube presence, because people that are watching this, they know who I am. They probably know me from YouTube. And so 2020 hit, right? And everyone was at home. And early on, I think in late March, early April, I can't remember. It must have been late March in 2020, because we had been on lockdown for like a week or two. I got an email from somebody in my band. I think it was Chad Willis, trumpet player, excellent, saying, check out this video, we should do something like this. And it was Chad LB, or Chad Lefkowitz Brown's big band, did a remote, like, virtual big band recording, and it was good. It was really good. They're a band in New York. They had been on lockdown a couple weeks longer than us here, because if you remember back, it hit in New York before it hit on the West Coast, and it was great. And so I gave it maybe a week of thought, and then was like, yeah, I got to do something like this. So I emailed everyone in my band at the time, and another person that I hasn't actually played with my band, another trumpeter, Joseph Leva, who had gotten me involved with another remote project at that point. And I asked all of them if they were interested in doing one of these remote videos, fully expecting a lot of them to say no, because it's kind of a technological thing. And to my surprise, every single person said yes. So we started recording these things where I would, make a MIDI demo of the whole. I mean, so the mystery of making one of these videos is you want it to sound like we're all playing together at the same time, but we're obviously not playing together at the same time, because that's impossible remotely. So the solution to that, at least the solution that I came up with, was to basically record or prepare a recording of the entire song as MIDI, like fake band, fake MIDI computer orchestra, and then replace the instruments one by one. So I'd have the drummer record first along to the MIDI, then I'd get his tracks back, and then I'd mute the bass and send a demo over to the bass player with no bass on it, and they'd add bass to it. And then I think the next one I do is lead trumpet, send over to lead trumpet, get that. Then I'd get lead saxophone and lead trombone. And then at that point, I would remove all the MIDI, because we have all the lead players and we have drums and bass. And then I'd send it to everybody else and just get all their parts, so they could at least, match the style of their lead players and get intonation from the bass. And that first recording took about a month to put together that way. I mean, because you're stretching it out. Like when I asked the drummer to do it, it takes him, probably 3-4 days to get back to me. And I don't know how many times people had to record, because a lot of the people in my band had never recorded on their own before. I remember getting on the phone with one of the trombonists in my band. He had no idea how to run even like GarageBand, and didn't have a professional microphone or anything. And I sort of described to him a way that he could record his part using like 2 cell phones. Like he would use one to listen to what I had sent him, and then another one to record. And as long as he didn't pause the recording during that, if he sent it to me, I could line it up and we'd be fine. And if there were, and that the piece that I chose originally was easy-ish, and had a lot of repetition. So as long as he got the figure right one of the times it happened, I would copy and paste it around and make it work for him.
Remind me, which was the first video that you did?
The first video that I did was a piece I wrote called The Cassowary.
Okay.
Which
yeah, I saw
that one it's kind of a sound alike to the Jaco Pastorius big band version of The Chicken, the James Brown or Pee Wee Ellis tune. That I had, written a couple years prior for my wife. My wife, it's a thing. If you're a jazz composer, you got to write a piece for your wife, right? But I knew if I wrote a piece called Caitlin and it was a ballad, she would hate it because she doesn't like listening to ballads. So instead, I did a sound alike for something that I knew that she liked. And I had never written a piece in that style before. I mean, it's got a lot of unisons, which sound easy, but if you've got a full band unison, it better be the right note, because if it's not, it's going to sound super, super not hip, right? So as simple as that particular chart is, it took a long time to get right. But anyway, it was simple. It didn't have any of the stuff that would make remote recording really tough. So if you imagine anything that would have to be conducted is much harder with no conductor, obviously, right? So retards and fermatas are kind of no-go for remote recording. I mean, they're possible, but they're much tougher than they are in person. And anything that would be rubato that's fully no-go. Like, just don't even mess with it. But yeah, retards you have to like map out and give a counting, okay, we're gonna retard soon. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you say that into the play along demo so that the people could follow it. But I avoided all that by doing a piece that had no retards and no fermatas. Like, it doesn't change tempo from the beginning, and then at the end it has a stab. So super easy. And we recorded it and it came out really, really good. Like, I mean, part of what helped, I think, was recording it sequentially like I did, and then not trying to mix it myself. I mean, a lot of my colleagues that were putting projects like this together were using it as an excuse to really learn how to get into mixing, which I think is wonderful. Like, mixing is a whole discipline in and of itself. For me, I've never really wanted to be a great mixer. So I've got a friend and collaborator, Jason Lee, who's worked with me on everything for, 10 years. And so any excuse I have to work with him is going to be a great one. And he brings so much. So he took this thing that sounded pretty good and made it sound like we were playing together in the room somehow, with some kind of knowing what he's doing, mixing wizardry. And it went really well. And so after we finished that, we recorded another piece, then another piece, and another piece, and another piece. And we did, I think, that first year, I mean, our first one came out in April, and I think by the end of December, we had done 9 or 10 of them, which is insane because of how much work there to do. But, I mean, this is the big but, they weren't getting a lot of views or listens, I guess, however you want to think about it. And I think the reason for that has nothing to do with the quality of the music. I mean, it might have to do with some kind of unknown X factor that my pieces may or may not possess, but I can't speak to that. But the general recording quality and the quality of the solos and all that stuff is really, really good. So I couldn't figure out why people weren't listening to it. And I think that a lot of that is that people in general kind of have the music that they like, and they want to listen to that over and over again. That's why a video, like an unearthed video of Count Basie from like 1982, is going to get incredible views. And something that I spent, 100 hours on can get, a few hundred in the first month. And so I thought, well, I should start making other videos to kind of advertise my music videos. And I was sort of, just sort of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick. I started doing how-to videos. I did like how to record yourself remotely, which is basically this podcast in video form so
I'll have to say that video you did of how to record yourself was very helpful to a lot of us that were, trying to do this same kind of thing with our little amateur bands and stuff all over the country.
Oh, yeah.
I think you put that together, and Christopher Bill did a nice one on similar subject.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chris Bill was already established at that point. So like he was going to get eyes, which is great. And what I didn't realize too is that Chad Leftwich Brown, was already established as well. So I was getting down on myself for not getting as many hits as he was. But he had already been doing YouTube for several years at that point. So of course he was getting hits. But anyway, I started doing these kind of videos and they weren't really hitting. And then I came out with one called Closed Voicing. And I called it a Big Band Arranging Secrets Revealed, because I thought that was really silly. Not get, I get a big kick. Every month or so I get a comment on one of my arranging videos that said, "These aren't secrets and you're revealing nothing." And my answer is, of course they're not secrets. Like, this is just some YouTube nonsense is what that is. But I put that video out and it was just climbing. And I noticed that my subscriber numbers were going up and the views on my actual music videos were going up. And I was like, well, let's keep writing this. So at that point, it was still, I forget exactly when it was, like very early 2021. And so I wasn't vaccinated yet. So I still wasn't leaving the house. So I was like, let's do a tutorial every single week. And I think that first year I did 30 arranging tutorials or something just completely stupid like that.
Well, I sat there and watched a few of them last night just to kind of prepare for this, and they're very good. I mean, I can't arrange my way out of a paper bag, but
well, that's not a good. That doesn't say much for my videos.
No. I'm
once you've seen them, you should be able to arrange out of a plastic bag.
Okay. Well, I tell everybody I'm not really a musician. I'm just a trombone player.
I mean,
honestly, I have no background in theory or any of that kind of stuff.
I mean, look, that's one of the reasons why I decided early on to focus on writing. There are a couple of reasons. I mean, the first one I think has more to do with aptitude, right? Like, I worked very hard to get to where I am as a trumpeter, but there were people all around me just showing up in Los Angeles all the time that could play me under the table, right? And I don't know how well you know the other LA players, but I have this feeling no matter how many hours I put into the trumpet, it's going to be really hard for me ever to catch up with like Javier or Dave Richards or anyone like that. Or it would be really, I don't know if I'll ever be able to improvise like Mike Rocha or Mike Catone or Aaron Janik or guys like that are my contemporaries, right? Now, on the flip side, when I got into writing, after I had written, 10 or 12 charts, I started getting called to write charts for projects that I would never be called for as a trumpeter, right? Like I get to write a chart and show up, and then like Bob McChesney's sitting in the band.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to have me play trumpet on the same project as Bob McChesney, but it makes sense to have me write the sheet music for it, right? And so that kind of let me know that, perhaps I'm onto something here, right? I've always had this feeling as a musician that it's less, I mean, this is going to sound a little bit reductive, but it's less about what I'm playing necessarily, and it's more about being part of a really good project, right? So, if I'm working on somebody else's project, but it's really good, I'm really proud of it. It's more important to me than having it be my own or be, breaking new ground or something like that. I mean, if you listen to my music, you know how concerned I am with breaking new ground, which is not at all, no concern at all. Oh God, I was going somewhere with that and I kind of trailed.
Well, let me ask you about your band. It's been going by the name Pandemonium Big Band. Was that just a name you created to go with the pandemic, or was that the
Absolutely.
name of the band before you?
Nope,
okay.
That's exactly it. So here's the thing. So, I mean, the story of the name of my band, when I started the band, I had no intention of playing live, right? It was strictly, I'm putting a bunch of great players together. We'll get one of the rooms at Cal State Long Beach, and because I was still in grad school then, and we'd all pile in and play for 2.5 hours, and we'd read the new chart that I had just written and maybe some charts that other people in the band brought in, and charts, maybe I made some changes to some old charts, and I'd record it on my mini disc recorder back then and listen to it over and over again and get an idea of what worked and what didn't work, and then I'd keep hitting it. But I remember maybe it was the fourth or fifth rehearsal. I went out to lunch with a bunch of people from the band afterwards, and they were sitting around eating hamburgers or whatever it was. And they were like, when are we going to play out? We should be performing. Like, this band's great. It sounds great. It's really fun. And I mean, at that time, there weren't a lot of younger people leading and writing for their own big bands in Los Angeles. Now there's tons, right? But at that point in 2007, I guess, 2006, 2007, I was there. Pretty soon after that, Jeremy Levy started his own band. He had moved into town and started a band, but for a while that was it. So whenever we were playing with bands outside of school, it was playing with union bands that were people of an older generation. And there was definitely this like, oh, here's these college kids and we'll show them the ropes and all that stuff. And we were a bunch of hot players, and we were like we don't want to be shown the ropes. We want to go out there and kick some butt, like with our own music. And so it had this energy behind it. And they really, everyone that was in the band really wanted to get out there and play. And so when I started booking gigs, I was like, I need to come up with a cool name for this jazz project. And I couldn't. And really the name got cemented the first time we played at the Jazz Bakery, which isn't there anymore. They used to put out, the Jazz Bakery was one of the big jazz venues in LA, and they would feature younger bands on like off nights. Right. So I can't remember. We played like a Wednesday night, but they always had these like mailer cards that were like the calendar for the month. It'd be a big grid for the month with all the names of who was playing, which was super cool. I wish I had that. I should have saved those things, but they needed the name for the band. And I was like, I don't know, my name's Elliot Deutsch and I have a big band. I'm like, Elliot Deutsch Big Band, boom. And like that was, and then we can cut that out. And then that was the name of the band until 2020, right? I couldn't shake it. And it was fine. Like, 'cause that's what jazz bands have, the name of the composer, big band or jazz orchestra. Sometimes you'll see large ensemble or something like that. But I like big band. There's something that's, to me, big band doesn't have any pretension, right? It has the problem of sometimes people assume that you're going to play dance music, right? But for me, it's like Buddy Rich big band or, Don Ellis big band. So I wanted mine to be big band and not jazz orchestra, just because the music that I listen to is all big band.
Yeah, it seems to me if you hear the word orchestra, you expect violins to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, you expect there to be some amount of like, you sit down and don't make any noise, and don't you dare clap between movements because that's improper. Like that kind of stuff. I didn't want that at that point. The best jazz concert I'd ever been to, and I went to a lot of jazz concerts when I was an undergrad, right? And I went one day to Old Catalina. If people that are in LA, one of the big jazz clubs in LA is Catalina's. And it's on Sunset, but they used to have another location that was, I don't know, a half mile away from there. And this was at the Old Catalina's. I saw the Yellow Jackets with Bob Mintzer. And I mean, they were great. First of all, they were great. But really what I think made it the best concert I had seen at that point was the audience was into it. And every time, someone would play a really great lick or something, people would start yelling and screaming and cheering really loud. And there was something to that where when the concert was over, I was like, this is what jazz is about, right? I had that feeling of this is the best concert I've ever been to, and I can't wait for more of it, right? And so like that's the feeling that I want, is to recreate that, the feeling of the Yellow Jackets in 2004 at Catalina's or whatever that was.
I mean, LA has, I've never even been there, but I know there's just so many good players in that town. I mean, I'm sure if I moved to LA, I probably couldn't even get an Easter church gig. But
there's also more gigs.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, Alex Isles has the good Easter church gigs, but
okay. But he can only play one at a time.
That's right.
Did you, I forgot to ask, did you grow up in LA?
I did. I'm one of the rare people that grew up in LA.
Okay.
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Chatsworth. Yeah.
Okay.
So, going to UCLA wasn't, I mean, I could have driven there from home. And there was a discussion when I got into UCLA, my parents said, good, you can live at home and then commute. And I said, well, then I'm not going to UCLA. they thought about it and came back like, no, you can live in the dorms. It's fine. We don't want to keep you from going to the best school you got into just because you don't want to live at home with us. Which I'm glad they saw it that way, because I absolutely would have turned it down.
I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But so what's your band doing now? Are you guys still playing pretty regularly?
No, we are lying dormant at the moment. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. So we've played 3 times since vaccine. I'm trying hard with my words. So like, I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but there's a lot of, post pandemic and that kind of talk. And I know that it's not the same as it was in 2020, because it's not. But it's like COVID's still hitting people all the time. So anyway, but since I got vaccinated, I've actually started doing things. And our first gig back was August of 2021. And that was a big deal because we'd all been vaccinated and we could get together in this jazz club and do it. And then we did a Christmas gig, and then we played over the summer. But I think it's related somewhat to my, YouTube lessons and stuff. I started getting asked to teach a lot more. I'm teaching 4 college classes as an adjunct now, which is, basically a full schedule. So the semester starts on Monday. I'm going to be teaching 2 sections of music technology at Cal Poly Pomona, and also a class on jazz harmony. And then I'm going to be teaching their soul ensemble, which, if you remember, I toured with Solomon Burke back in the day, so I got some little soul pedigree.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be teaching jazz history at Mount Sac, which is a junior college right next to Cal Poly Pomona. So that's been filling my schedule pretty ruthlessly. And I've been teaching a lot of online arranging lessons. And when I say a lot, I mean usually, 6 to 10 a week, like 1-hour lessons sort of scheduled around my other teaching.
So there's like private lessons where you
Private
do
lessons.
one-on-one kind of, oh, that's cool.
One-on-one over Zoom lessons. And those like started as a trickle, and now it's a, big part of my work. My workload is teaching online lessons, and it's wonderful. It's super, super cool. I mean, earlier this week, I had a student from Spain, then a student from Canada, and then a student in Australia, and then I had a student in the US, and then the next morning I taught a student. Where were they? I taught 2 in UK the next day. And then 1 on the East Coast and 1 on the West Coast of the US. So it's really bizarre. It's really cool that I get to meet aspiring arrangers from all over the world, and they trust me to kind of show them how to write. But they've all found me through YouTube. Like, YouTube has been excellent.
Yeah, I remember when you were all excited about having 1,000 subscribers, and now you're up to about 8,000. So that's pretty progress.
I mean, I'll tell you the secret: getting to the first 1,000 is much harder than going from 1,000 to 8,000. Like, during this last semester, during during the fall semester, I was teaching 4 days a week, and I was on campus 4 or 5 hours a day, and with the commute on either side. And then the polka band was playing 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I was working essentially 7 days a week. I didn't have a single day off for, I think, 7 weeks. And then when I finally started to get days off, I would just sleep all day. And so I didn't release a video for about 4 months. But during those 4 months, I had 1,000 subscribers join, just based on the stuff that was already there.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff. You can spend hours on your channel for sure.
Thank you. But yeah, the first 1,000, that was grueling because, people aren't really I think there's part of the culture of YouTube is when people see a low subscriber amount, they assume that it's low because it's not good, which is of course ridiculous. I've been asked several times by young, like, aspiring composers, like, what's the best thing that they can do in order to establish themselves or to get clients, right? And my answer is just keep writing, right? Like, there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, first, I mean, the more you write, the better you are going to get at it. If you're like working at it in a productive way, like we're all musicians and we all grew up practicing, and you know that if you just play all the stuff you know already, you're not going to get any stronger. And so, write in keys that you're not comfortable in, and try to write in styles that you haven't done before, because there's a different kind of vernacular for each style. Right. If you write a salsa chart, it's going to have different figures than if you write a swing chart. Right. So that kind of stuff, aside from just being straight eighths, there's just the licks are different. And so there's that. And then, try to do things orchestrationally that you haven't done before. So if you see yourself leaning too much on closed voicing, try to use some spread voicings, or try to write a chart that's predominantly like unisons or octaves, or try to make a chart that gets louder and louder and louder, and kind of force yourself into like, how do I get louder than Tootie, right? And so you'll figure these things out because you make a point of it, right? And you get better and better. And then the other part is that people that are interested in hiring you to write, or interested in hiring writers that might be you, are going to ask you, what have you written recently? Like, that's like their biggest immediate question. I mean, you ask me, like, what's my band up to, right? And it's like, not having an answer is not a good thing, right? If what I'm trying to do is have my band perform everywhere, I should have performances, or at least be rehearsing new music and be like, we met last week and played 3 new songs and we can't wait to unleash them on the world. And then if you were a venue, you go, oh, well, you should unleash them on the world at my venue, right? When I say we haven't been doing anything because nobody's called, like, that's a terrible answer. So if what you're trying to do is become a writer or a player, I mean, anything you're trying to do, just do it. And people that want to have what you do as part of their project will see what you're doing. Or your colleagues will be, oh, I know Elliot's been writing a lot. So when somebody else asks me, do you know somebody that could write an arrangement of this? I would go, oh, you should call Elliot. He's my friend and I'm sure he'd be great. So just whatever you want to do, if you have the luxury of time, don't wait for somebody else to ask you to do it. Just do it yourself.
Let's see. Just looking at your website, looks like you got about a dozen charts for sale.
Oh yeah.
I
should update that.
I was gonna say, because you did that whole tutorial on Girl from Ipanema, and I don't see Girl from Ipanema.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. So when I put the website, I mean, I need to update that terribly because I don't think I've updated it since I did that arrangement. But I'm not selling any arrangements that I've done of copyrighted music on my website directly like that. So everything you see there is going to either be public domain or arrangements of public domain songs like Auld Lang Syne, or originals that I've done, fully original pieces.
Yeah, I guess financially, if you were selling an arrangement, then you have to pay royalties.
I mean, it's less simple than that. So if I was going to sell a recording that I made of The Girl from Ipanema, I'd have to pay royalties, right? If I'm going to sell the written arrangement, I actually have to get permission from whoever owns the copyright from that to have made a new version of it that I could sell as sheet music. So it's more convoluted than just performing it. But, and you guys can choose to read between the lines if you'd like. If you're somebody that's writing arrangements like this and somebody else wants to buy it from you, just sell it to them.
I see you had a whole video on the copyright issue, which I think was very interesting. And basically, you said that until you start trying to make money off something, that record companies don't really care.
Yeah, 100%, 100,000%. So, I mean, here's the thing: when you're trying to learn how to arrange music, every piece that's ever been written for jazz band, at least, has a tune that's then been arranged for jazz band, right? Even if like a piece that I've written beginning to end could be reduced to a lead sheet, like there's a melody that's in the piece that has chord changes, and so it's a lead sheet thing. If you're just starting out and you've never written for big band before, or it's your first 5 or 6 pieces, take a song that you already like, right, in a sentimental mood or something, and arrange that for big band, because then at least the song is rock solid, right? And then the only variable is how good your arrangement of it is, right? Whereas if you're writing the song and arranging it, if you don't have a lot of songwriting practice, the song might be shenanigans. Then it doesn't matter how good or how solid your arrangement is, it's still going to be kind of lousy, right? So this is actually advice that was given to me by my graduate school professor, Jeff Jarvis, who, for those of you that don't know that name, does a lot of like high school, middle school level compositions for Kendor. He was a part owner of Kendor, but a very prolific educational big band composer. And he told our class, and he told me several times when I was just getting started, like, choose really great pieces and then arrange them. And that's sort of your practice. So if you're trying to get into arranging or big band composition without doing that, you're going to have to also be a good songwriter first, which is kind of a totally different discipline. So you're basically trying to tackle two disciplines at once, which is a lot. But beyond that, I mean, if you just listen to records, like arrangers doing cool new versions of existing songs is part of the jazz tradition, right? Like, it's been that way since before copyright. Like I remember going to hear Van Alexander, who was several generations ago, very established arranger. He did the arrangement of A Tisket a Tasket for Ella Fitzgerald. And I got to know him right at the end of his life. But he was giving this talk about how he said, why did he get into arranging? And he said when he was a kid, he used to sneak a radio into his bedroom at night and listen to the top 10. And the top 10 back in the 1920s was a lot of times the same song recorded by 10 different jazz orchestras. Right? Okay. Because there was no copyright back then. Like a new popular song would come out, they'd all have their own version of it. And he was like, how come Chick Webb's version is so much hipper than Paul Whiteman's version? Right? And he figured out pretty quickly that that's because of the arrangers, right? Like, the arranger is what makes the difference, because the song is just as good in both. But Chick Webb's version is so much hipper, or Benny Goodman's version, or whichever one we're thinking of, that has stood the test of time. And so, like, since then, I mean, if you get a Diana Krall record, it's going to be 3/4 traditional American songbook things and 1/4 her originals. So doing versions of classic American songbook or jazz standards is part of the jazz tradition. And to try to cut yourself off from that because you're afraid that some executive from Sony Music is going to sue you is kind of insane, right?
Sounds good to me. I've never tried to arrange
to go back to it, the only way you can learn how to arrange is by arranging a lot. And so the last thing you want to do is you're listening to a Miles Davis record and you go, I love that tune, Someday My Prince Will Come. I have a great idea of how to do that for big band, right? And then you sit down and then you're like, I have this idea, but I shouldn't do it right now because I might get sued. So, and then you're just squashing your inspiration. But if you're ever going to do this, you got to ride that inspiration, right? Like, you might be able to get, 32, 64 bars of it written before, that wave kind of falls off, and then you have enough to finish the chart. But if you don't ride that, you'll never get there. So once you're established, then, maybe you can't sell some of these arrangements that you've written, but you've certainly gotten a lot out of having written them. So if you can't sell them, so what? Also, just to continue the blabbing, the first 20 arrangements you write, you're never going to want to sell. Not in a million years, because they're going to be terrible, right? There's going to be good things about them. But if you've made it past there, then you're not going to want to sell your earlier ones because they're just not as good as the stuff that you write later. And my first big band chart was an arrangement of I Let a Song Go Out of My Heart, which is Duke Ellington, right? Which is a ridiculous choice to arrange for big band because there's already a big band version of it and it's by Duke Ellington. So why would I want to do that? But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking, I like that song and I want to arrange it, right? And I wrote that chart, and it probably took me 60 hours to write over the course of a month. And we played it, and it sounded good. Like it sounded like a real big band chart, right? But like now, with 17 years experience in this, I could write a full chart in 2 or 3 days, and it's going to be, not only is it going to sound better than that arrangement of I Let a Song Go Out of My Heart, it's going to be just objectively better. Like more complex, more better use of the orchestra, better use of the orchestration. It's going to hit the climax in a much more satisfying way. Everything about it's going to be better. So be okay with your first, several dozen charts not being your best ones, and don't worry about it. If you want to arrange an off limit like Disney song from Little Mermaid, like just do it. Now, when you're an established writer and you're working for a publishing house or something, like then that's a totally different story. But while you're just trying to like get your bearings, like arrange whatever the heck you want. Arrange Beatles songs. Like what's the most off limits? Beatles, maybe?
Okay, Elliot. Hey, thanks so much for being with us today. And anything else you want to plug before we end this little dog and pony show?
So the main thing, go check out my YouTube channel, Pandemonium Big Band. It's youtube.com/ @ that's the thing they're doing now, Pandemonium Big Band, or just search YouTube for Pandemonium Big Band. And also, you can find my music on Apple Music or Spotify or a bunch of other services. I don't know. But yeah, that'll be under Pandemonium Big Band or Elliot Deutsch. And, while you're at it, check out Adam Smith, ATOM Smith. I've been doing all of the horn arrangements for his like super popular electro swing things, and those are really hip. And so you want to check those out as well.
Okay. Well, really appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been great. And I'll keep watching that channel and look forward to seeing you do great things, win some Grammy Awards or something.
I'm on it.